Hey everyone, Joshua Kirk here with you once again, and now it's time for episode 173 of Album of the Day, in which today's artist is a New Orleans singer-songwriter who released his self-titled debut album back in 2014 for ATO Records to widespread acclaim for his kind of forceful vocals and whatnot. And an artist that sort of gained a bit of a cult following for the last few years. And the artist I'm talking about is known as Benjamin Booker. And it's an he's been around for like a few years now, but never got around to listening to him until just this year, about a month ago, when ATO Records sent me a few of their new CD releases and whatnot. So I'm here to review Benjamin Booker's sophomore album, which dropped on June 2nd this year, so pretty recent, even though didn't get to listen to it till August. And the album is called Witness, and as you can see, this is the CD of that album right here. And this one's been getting some critical acclaim as well. This is, in my opinion, definitely one of the best records I've heard this year. That sort of melds together like garage rock and blues with elements, definitely a strong element of southern R&B to it as well. Definitely plays some pretty prominent influences on here. And with occasional kind of splashes of punk in there, because it's at points kind of loud and features some very powerful vocals, and lyrically kind of covers topics such as racism and whatnot, which kind of makes sense coming from a New Orleans-based artist right here. So anyway, this is the cover, which the cover is actually kind of cool if you ask me. Even though it's basically just a photo of him, and there's the back. There's 10 songs on the album, and it clocks in at over 32 minutes, so pretty short right here. Then there's the liner notes of all the musicians that played on the record, as well as production liner notes and all that. And then here are the thank yous and everything else. Then here's a little insert here, which has a poster of the album cover. Looks a lot better than just the small version of the cover art, in my opinion. And then here are the lyrics. And that's packaging for the new Benjamin Booker album, Witness. And this is definitely, like I said, it's definitely a great record. And one of the things I definitely noticed how wonderfully original this guy is. One of the things that really caught my attention right away about his music was his voice, which definitely has so much soul and power to it. It has a certain kind of gruffness to it to kind of set it apart from some other soul music that you hear today, sort of paying homage to, it kind of has sort of that old school kind of retro sort of tone to it. And the instrumentals have kind of a similar thing going on as well, but still with plenty of creativity and nuance to definitely set it apart from that older soul music and kind of giving it kind of a modern garage rock infused kind of twist, pretty much. And right off the bat, from the opening song, Right On You, we're definitely in for one hell of a record. It starts out with this, like, kind of weird intro, which is, like, sort of like, weird kind of intro, which gives the song a sense of looseness that I do really like a lot, and it's, like, very raw and stuff like that, with, like, distorted guitars, punchy drums, and of course that really killer vocal performance from Benjamin. Uh, Benjamin. The lyrics on this song are really are interesting, but I will admit that the lyrics aren't necessarily the thing on this track that really, kind of has me like drawn into it. It's really just the energy and just the power in his voice that definitely does make it one of the most memorable cuts on the entire LP, even though it is quite short. And it transitions really well into the song Motivation, which, is a much kind of calmer, more kind of soulful kind of track with really beautiful string arrangements that open up the song really nicely. A good bass line to it, with the drums definitely sound really nice on there too. And I also do really like that kind of bluesy guitar solo, like towards the middle of it, is definitely really awesome as well. And this song sort of sees Booker kind of reflecting on kind of his problems, pretty much of reflecting on sort of his problems, which are problems where he feels like a man with no home, pretty much, which sort of fits in with sort of kind of the political topics going on this record. And he asks himself all these questions like, can I find something better? Am I fated to roam? Am I making good choices? Am I made out of stone? But sort of concluding that maybe all he needs is a little motivation, and if he wants it, he can have it, which is definitely the truth right there. Yeah, and I just love some of how poetic the lyrics on this song are, including the final line on the last verse, which goes, "It's a blatant dismissal of a sad history," which definitely very much kind of illustrates kind of the message of the album, I think, really well. The title track, Witness, is sort of the lead single on this record, and definitely the one song that I think really does kind of tie this whole album together really nicely. A really good instrumental on this track. Still on this track, some nice rhythmic, kind of funky bass and drums. And I forgot to mention the bass line on Motivation has a bit of a Motown flavor to it, which I do really like. And same kind of applies with the bass and drums here on this song. I love the blinky piano in it, as well as that beautiful kind of slab of fuzzy guitar that sort of busts in the background. And in the background, very soulful backup vocals on the track too, and it does have a hook sung very soulfully and beautifully by Chicago-based soul singer Mavis Staples. Mavis Staples, which really adds to what Booker is saying about kind of how about the whole damnation trying to take us down, as he says in there, sort of covering, again, covering all the topics about racism and whatnot, and sort of wondering if he's going to be a witness, pretty much. So. And it seems like they're being taken down because there's kind of less sort of agreement. There's sort of less agreement and stuff like that, and more just kind of dying, brothers dying, mothers crying, and the TV's lying and stuff like that. So, and like sort of the public calling black people like dangerous, cancerous, and not to trust, which is definitely very unfair considering everyone definitely should be treated in a pretty equal way, regardless of their race or their culture or whatever. And then I like how in the chorus Mavis Staples sort of kind of adds to that story with bringing in the point of view of a character who is really kind of afraid that she may become a witness of these cops trying to shoot all these cops trying to shoot black people. The song "The Slow Drag Under" also kind of talks about the racism thing again. About how black people sort of feel kind of isolated from society, and it's really hard to like beat those kind of hard days, and they kind of feel like they're living inside of a cage, like a bird. And also sort of talking about how unfortunately some people are gonna and the narrator sort of talks to someone who who unfortunately is gonna be kind of left by everyone. Like if he don't, like it's got kind of a message of the everyone is gonna leave you if you don't change now. And how you won't make it too much longer. So plant your feet on the ground, but also kind of bringing a sense of hope to the subject here with the line of, "Can't your family save you? It's been so long now. Call them up when you get lonely, just to hear that they're proud." Someone needing that support from their families, so that way he can feel stronger regardless of society trying to paint this person as just kind of a weakness. And I also do really like how this one has kind of a bluesy instrumental to it, like kind of bluesy musical structure to it, as well as that lovely, like kind of jagged, raw electric guitar on there, which especially sounds cool when it gets to that solo. Once it gets to that solo. And I also do really like how catchy the song is, like the hook of isolation is definitely bound to kind of get ingrained in your head for a little while. The song "Truth is Heavy" is sort of Benjamin sort of reflecting on kind of the troubles of a relationship, pretty much, and sort of opening up with the line, "I'm afraid I'm gonna hurt you, Mary, drag you down into the mud. In my head they're taking bets on the day when you say you've had enough." That's poeticism right there. And sort of revealing how the problem isn't necessarily all the baggage that he's got going on, but rather kind of how he lets it kind of get to him. And he's having trouble trying to accept the fact that someone might love him, and revealing in the chorus that he doesn't really get that far, or he's trying to hold on. But then the significant other in the story sort of tries to say, like, there's no need to worry, and she isn't going anywhere either, necessarily. but then also saying like how you could have with someone who ain't fighting with himself regularly, and I also do really like the kind of, and also I thought the female backup vocals were definitely very gorgeous. The "you see the truth is heavy," it definitely is yet another just really catchy hook on there. And also another instrumental on here that I definitely think sounds really creative. The kind of like a really cool bass line on this track. The bass line is kind of a do 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 do. Like it's not quite like a fretless bass sound or something like that. It's, you know, kind of this sound that you know, I'm not really sure how they made that sound, but it definitely is one of the elements in the song that I really do think adds an extra little kick to it that I really like. As well as I also love that kind of dramatic sort of, I love that kind of, I do also really like that kind of dramatic low-end keyboard growls, the yeah, I thought sounded really nice. That kind of scuzzed out electric piano, I definitely think really also did add a lot more spice to it. It's like this album, pretty much like this song, I think instrumentally is a perfect example of like it's like a really flavorful it's kind of like a really flavorful bowl of musical New Orleans gumbo right here, like where all the ingredients are like kind of blending together to create this very kind of flavorful, succulent, and spicy like sonic soup. Soup. The song "Believe" is definitely another one of my favorite tracks on this record. Just the production on this song is probably some of the most gorgeous and most nuanced on the entire LP. The string arrangements on this song, I love how they just kind of sweep in and out of the song, really adding a sense of beauty to it, and making it sound like kind of a long lost kind of 60s, 70s soul ballad, pretty much. Ballad. And he's sort of making a pretty big statement here, saying he wants to believe in something, regardless of it being right or wrong. And he's sort of like, how can I make it on my own? Like he's sort of like addressing some kind of darkness, but at the same time really kind of confronting it with a sense of just like catharsis and hope, pretty much, which I definitely do think that is kind of like what the whole record is about. It's, you know, got some kind of heartbreaking lyrics, but at the same time, there's definitely a sense of like a silver lining in that cloud, pretty much. Even if the chorus, even if the bridge on this song goes, and now it's hard to swallow. You found something to follow, but you're still feeling hollow. I don't know what I'm missing, which that part actually sort of transitions into by far the most heavenly part of the song, where the strings really do sound fantastic, and also I do really like the female backup vocals is definitely really nicely incorporated in there too. The song "Overtime" is kind of a song sort of kind of looking at, you know, the human condition a little bit, him sort of reflecting on kind of his own sort of issues, pretty much, of like shoes, pretty much much and sort of wondering, when do you become a faithless man? Not really in a self-referential kind of way, but kind of more directing it kind of, you know, either, kind of directing it sort of at the listener a little bit, as I kind of uh, look into it more. And I love the lyric of, "It's easy to forget that the recent wave of helpful confidence grew from the one you're leaving now." Now, and I do really like the kind of call and response female backup vocals on here, which I think female backup vocals actually are one thing that I think are used very like creatively and very like in a very kind of catchy way, which I like, and they're not just coming in to try to go overboard of the lead singer. So, singer, and probably my favorite line on this song is like, "I believe you know that you feel it on the nights you're all alone, that life's not some glossy love song. You have got to work for good things in this world. A good person's worth the overtime." Really revealing the truth there, because it is true. Life definitely has its, its pros and its cons, and it's definitely, not as, lighthearted and as, like, sunny all the time as you would think. The song "Above the Ground" I definitely do think is very interesting. I like how it starts out kind of like a kind of a sweet little, kind of beautiful, like, sort of love letter to happiness, sort of telling it to kind of come back and, at least kind of hang around for a little while and not just kind of be coming and going because of, his issues and stuff like that. But then he gets, like, more kind of furious with the second half, which is, like, probably one of the kind of loudest, most kind of aggressive moments on here. Probably the most punky moment on the entire LPs, which it's kind of funny how it follows probably right after the quietest moment on the entire album. And he really brings just so much power and force to that second half, especially with the shouted lines of "You have got to get out now," of like the voices in his head, as well as "Hallelujah, we're off the ground." I know that wasn't the best impression of that, but I'm very sure you know what I'm saying. This track really does kick ass in that part. Carrie is definitely another one that I think really does have kind of the soul thing going on, especially considering the instrumentation is just piano, bass, and drums with his vocal and a few backup singers. Singers, and sort of revealing how the man you see here hasn't always been strong or been bright. And again, sort of making a statement like, I'm just asking for orders, begging for wisdom, pleading for something to alleviate all the doubt. Really kind of confronting his anxieties, I think, definitely very well here. And definitely some pretty heartbreaking lyrics about how it's hard to reason with him and he can only see cons and all good things fade out. And even in dreams, he doesn't win. He doesn't even get bronze. The closing track is definitely another one that goes for kind of the loud, punky side of things, which is the really short "All Was Well," which features this kind of buzzing bass line as well as some kind of crazy, like kind of off-kilter drumming and guitars, which definitely reveals yet again another sense of very kind of raw, sort of loose, kind of non-polished kind of glory. Glory. Benjamin's vocals on the track are kind of distorted and stuff like that, and he definitely does crank out yet another very powerful performance, even if this kind of fuzzy instrumental does kind of end abruptly and transition into strings, as well as Benjamin sort of saying in kind of in kind of a tense kind of way. That it isn't going to easy, but he's going to tear this building down. So, like, the song definitely does close out the album on a really good note, but I will admit that it was definitely, like, too short in my opinion, and if it were longer, I think it would have been maybe a little more memorable. Memorable. But overall, I'm definitely very impressed by what I'm hearing here on this record. I'm gonna have to give his first album a listen, considering how much I really dug this album, and it's definitely one that held up, I think, really well, and I think it's pretty bound to make it onto my top 50 records list when I do that at the end of the year. So I'm gonna give Witness, the latest Benjamin Booker record, an 8 out of 10, because it's definitely just incredibly consistent, focused, and just all around very powerful, soulful kind of garage punk right here. So that's my review of the new Benjamin Booker record, Witness, and I'll see you for episode 174.